The event today is considered to be a reenactment of a particular event that had happened here in the 18th century.
I'm absolutely staggered by the friendliness of the people who put this together. The crowds come, they ask not only nice questions and are polite and enthusiastic, they are surprisingly knowledgeable. I mean, I know this is an annual event, so you see people more and more, but it's a great opportunity for us to go deeper into our hobby because people ask us better questions. People are always keenly interested. They remember what they saw last year and they form questions about it. It's actually it's a school on how to be a good reenactor because you have all the tools, you have a nice site, but you also have an enthusiastic crowd and a helpful support staff. It couldn't be better.
The participants here are volunteers for the most part who dedicate their time and hours before the event because of the amount of cost that goes into their uniforms and their own involvement here in participating at the Battle of, what should I say, Red Bank. Now, Red Bank is in the Jerseys, considering in the 18th century, the West Jerseys. Across the river is another fort called Mifflin. There was a fort here at one time that held up the British Navy and troop transports to move into the city of Philadelphia. So Red Bank was a strategic spot along with Fort Mifflin, which was referred to also as Mud Island.
The British had to knock out the forts on both sides of the river to be able to take Philadelphia, which was the capital of the American colonies at that time.
The people that come out to an event like this are representing many different units that participated in the rebellion, or should I say, you could also be someone that would consider themselves patriotic. There's lots of political points of view. Most of the time, people will come out to an event to enjoy themselves for the weekend. Fire their muskets, sit around the campfire, enjoy the different types of food that were available in the 18th century. This particular event represents troop movements of the king that was running against oppositions in the Pennsylvania side because of the marshes before you would move into Philadelphia. Fort Mifflin was actually under siege for quite a few days. The last reports that I've heard are 1,000 rounds an hour were being dumped into Fort Mifflin. The fort here was also under siege by certain ships of the British Royal Navy. British troops embarked off of some of the troop transport ships and made their way onto land, along backed up with Hessians. Hessians were from different parts of Germany and principalities that were hired by King George III to squelch the rebellion. They were professional troops along with a lot of the British troops that were enlisted.
Fort Mercer, the more you go into it, the more you realize there was British politics even back then. There's evidence suggesting that Von Donop was given a very difficult task in hope that he would do his best but would be less, let's just say, less of a concern at staff meetings. He tended to be a very forceful and dynamic person, and he also tended to show some people up. So although everybody thought it was a tragic waste of soldiers, the way they assaulted the fort, I think there were those who said, well, at least I'll not have to hang out with Emil anymore. You know, there were people, I don't think anybody wished him harm per se, but I think there was a call to show him some humility. And I think there were also some people who maybe benefited from his future absence in meetings, they got to shine a little more. He thought there should have been heavier artillery brought to bear. He thought there were plenty of shortcomings in the plan, let's just say that. But he was told to do it, and he said, I'll do my best. And then, of course, other people said, we never told him to do it that way. And again, it's kind of interesting because there were repercussions from it.
So you might call someone out.
You know, you don't lose that many guys on a frontal assault with having somebody mention you unkindly. And there were lots of documentation on why it was done and should it have been done differently. So it's kind of interesting when you start to read in between the lines. Some of it's inference and some of it's maybe unfair, but it's still interesting to read.
British troops were coming along the embankment here, made their way up into the fort with opposition from the Continental Army. There are a number of different militia units and riflemen units that were associated with the Continental Army. They were held up in the trenches and in regards to firing. The big problem that the Hessians had, which they forgot to bring, were scaling ladders. Scaling ladders to be able to make it over the ramparts to get into the fort. Eventually they did, and the fort was taken. Fort Mifflin itself was actually avoided. After bombarding it for so many years, so many days, troops moved around. So this reenactment is a way of teaching the general public on what has happened at one particular time.
So it's a good hobby to get into. You get to see that, thankfully, as crazy as things are today, they were just as bad back then, and we got through it then, and we'll get through it now. Thank you much.
Black Watch.